Hey, what's going on guys? I'm Mr. here. Today I am back with a Eugene D deck profile. Now this is a deck profile that I've been wanting to do ever since the start of D. People who know me know that I'm actually a really huge fan of Dragon Empire, of Narukami in general, and this is really the closest deck that I have to that. Honestly, I wasn't really hyped about, the first 5 SDs or, the first 10 decks to be very honest, but after re-looking at all of them, I really just liked Eugene the more I playtested him. And so I eventually got it in person, and now I'm doing a deck profile on it. Fair enough. But while I've been doing all of this in my little corner, I've noticed that Eugene is becoming the most controversial deck of this entire format, or if not this game. There's some people who really genuinely believe that Eugene is a fun and relatively playable deck. And then there are some people who just completely shit on the deck, like it's not even funny. I'm not really a fan of using the words like shit on decks, because I personally don't believe that there's objectively any deck that should be shat on unless it's, seriously bad. And Eugene definitely doesn't fit my bill of being objectively bad. But I really understand why there's so much hate towards this deck. And today we're gonna actually break it down, along with some new support, or actually the one support from Festival Collection. And let's see, with all this support together in part of Wave 1 of the Dragon Empire and of Overdress, is Eugene really the big loser as we say he is? How bad or good is Eugene? So today, let's go into what I think is personally one of the safer and better builds for Eugene. Now, just something really quick for those of you who are actually following the lore of Overdress on the Overdress website and whatnot. Eugene has a lore connection to Drachma. So if that's something you're interested in, please watch and wait for the lore website to finally translate Eugene into English and read it for yourself. Or if you're like me, just read the Japanese version. But regardless, this is something you won't want to miss, whether you're a Eugene hater or not. So now let's actually start with the right deck. The right deck consists of Bart, Nigel, Randall, and Eugene. So as you can probably guess, it goes up from grade 0 to 3. It's pretty obvious. I really don't have to describe myself. So the grade 0 has the same skill. When you ride on top of it, if you go second, you draw. I mean, this is as obvious as it can get. Then for our grade 1s, we have Nigel. Nigel's skill is when he's rolled on top by Randall, you soul charge 1. So it helps to build the soul for Eugene's big meme skill, but we'll break that one down a lot more later. Its second skill is where it still has a lot of applications for the deck, and that is that whenever your opponent's rearguard's retired, counterblast 1, you retire this guy, and then you retire another rearguard instead. It's a very equal 1-for-1 trade, which at face value is like, okay, that's not that bad, but there's room for improvement. You're definitely right. There is room for improvement. And the reason why this card is still good in the deck to begin with is because of Eugene's first skill, which that's how it's supposed to be used in tandem. So we'll get to that once I reach Eugene, then it'll make sense. For someone who doesn't make sense, we tackle Randall. Randall's skill is, when he's rolled atop by Eugene, you choose one card from your drop zone, put in the soul, and then you draw. The fun part about this though is that it's a soul charge that's not from the top of your deck. So it doesn't actually cause you to soul charge and thus lose cards in your deck. On the contrary, it's actually soul charging from the drop, which you will have because you discard cards to open the right deck. So I mean, that was really interesting on Bushiroad's part in my opinion. Like, they seriously could have chosen not to do that, but they did, so it's alright. But very sadly, that's where the good parts of this card end. The second skill is bad. The skill is Counterblast 1 when its unit attacks on vanguard and or rearguard. Soul charge 1 if you have 2 or less rearguards of the opponent, plus 5k. I mean, honestly, the fact that you have to counterblast to get just 1 soul charge and a 5k power, it's bad. And when you see the grade 2 lineup that we have, it will really totally outshine this card. In fact, even when you ride Randall, I strongly suggest you not to actually use Randall's skill because it's a huge waste of counterblast. So let's get to the king himself, Eugene. Eugene has 2 skills. The first skill, actually both skills are once per turn, so I'm not going to repeat that. The first skill is you rest 2 units, you choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. This unit gains 10k. It's good in the sense that, it's not shackled by counter blast or soul blast or a discard. It's purely just board plussing and minus. If you have a 2 units on board, you rest them, you minus one of the opponent. Straight away, it gains 10k. Even if your opponent doesn't have any rear guards, you can just rest 2 to gain the 10k. I feel that this is something I actually need to mention, so just keep that in mind. Really, it's not a bad skill, honestly, the fact that you rest 2 to gain 10k and then you retire 1. Yes, you do lose 2 rear guard spots per se, but as we've seen with stuff like Nigel, even when you rest a rear guard, it's not exactly wasted. For Nigel, he just kills himself to kill another rear guard. And we will see later on in the deck more and more that there are more examples of such cards. And even in the next set, DBTO2, there is even more of this. So we'll get to the DBTO2 reveal when DBTO2 does roll out. But it's just something there to know that Eugene is being supported for the skill. The second skill, however, is the one that he's being most mocked for. Or at least that's what I feel from what I read and talk to with people. The skill is, it's straightforward. You soul blast 5 cards. Then you look at the top number of cards of your deck as per the number of open rear guards of the opponent. Superior call as many as you wish. Soul charge the rest. At the worst case scenario, at the absolute worst case scenario, you soul blast 5 to soul charge, 5. But that is if you have a full field, empty for the opponent. And opening the top 5 is really bad because, you're totally reliant on the RNG. And that's the most common point to just pin on Eugene and say, oh, because of this, it's just seriously bad, I just hate this thing because it's just so RNG reliant, the pieces are so weak. But I feel the people who say this don't actually understand why this skill was built in. Eugene is not in any way reliant on the SB5 skill, which will shock people. They'll be like, what, really? Yes, it's not reliant on the Soul Blast 5 skill. In fact, it's the furthest thing from reliant. The Soul Blast 5 skill is used to help Eugene as it goes later on in the game. If you Soul Blast 5 and you get to look at about 4 to 5 cards, assuming you're playing Eugene correctly and you snipe off rear guards, you actually get a sort of second hand, which is how I really look at Eugene. Yes, Eugene is locked behind the fact that, it needs to have retired a unit this turn, and against stuff like Barrow Magnes, there's no retire, haha, it's instant loss. But then again, Barrow Magnes is also the worst matchup of Eugene, so it is objectively not fair to just say that because it is the one matchup Eugene is meant to lose, or at least most of the time it is going to lose this matchup. But if you compare it to any normal situation, retiring rear guards isn't hard at all. I mean, even if you want to say, that's for Sun, yeah, but your opponent will have Alden, your opponent will have Owain, your opponent will have, something not with resist. It's not like every card in this game has resist, so neither of Eugene's skills are really a problem. And like I said, you call as many as you wish and soul charge the rest. Even if you get something completely, not complete, if you get something abysmal, like let's say 2 triggers and a grade 2, you get to keep the grade 2 on board and you soul charge 2, which you still do get something on the board. It's not complete waste, and that is something I feel most people don't actually get. And we still have other stuff in the Eugene deck that really supplements some aggression. Like I said, this deck is going to be more of an aggro control build. It's meant to really parallel Narukami, the way that Narukami plays as an aggro and control deck, which I feel that's the direction Bushiroad is actually pushing this deck in, strangely. I think most people had the same sentiments as me, where when they saw the Eugene support, we were like, is this Blade Master? Because, it's focusing on open rear guards, but as we slowly get more, it doesn't seem like that anymore. It really seems to tilt more towards the way V Narukami used the blade. And I find it really intriguing as to how they will design it more. I still really do hope Eugene gets, a few better cards, like actual on-par cards with the rest of the format, as we've seen for stuff like Bruce and whatnot. But it's not horrible at this point in time, is what I want to say. moving on, now that I've actually got the main bulk of the discussion out of the way, the rest of the deck is really straightforward. For grade 3s, we play 3 more Eugene, because, for Eugene, because, Persona, right? We've played for Tri-Bash, and 2 copies of Sunlight Punishment. I really don't have to describe this one. I feel this is really straightforward on why we play for Eugene. The Persona, right? It's really good. And then after that, we move on to the other grade 3, which is Tri-Bash. Tri-Bash here, my pen. Tri-Bash here is really good. Tri-Bash's skill is, if your opponent has 2 or less rearguards, when your vanguard declares an attack, put this unit into the soul, your vanguard gains a crit. A crit, just a crit. It's really good. I mean, when your vanguard attacks, you can just literally have Tri-Bash as one of your rested units for that same cost, and then you just put it into the soul, and boom, you didn't waste it at all. It's still a free crit. Even if you don't, it's still a decent 13k grade 3 that you can swing first and then put into your soul, it gains a crit. The fact that it puts into soul is also really good because it supplements to pay the cost for the soul +5. The crit is really what we're here for. It's the aggressive pressure that it puts on. So really, Tri-Bash is an all-rounder card that it's going to be hard to get this one out of the deck. I mean, unless the future Eugene support does way better than this, at least for the grade 3 slot, I foresee Tri-Bash as something that will stay in the deck. And then of course, as tech, we play 2 copies of the spell card Sunlight Punishment. Sunlight Punishment skill is you counterblast as many counterblasts as you wish, choose as many rearguards as which you counterblasted, retire them. Sunlight Punishment is in this deck strictly as an extreme backup. Really, it's your last resort, last chance to just flip the tides back in your favor and just burn the board if it's going way too far for you to actually retire one by one with stuff like Eugene, Nigel, that kind of thing. This is your one chance to just pay it all back. It's gone. And then hopefully with the amount of removal you've done, you get enough pressure and with your magic numbers and whatnot to really come back and beat back the opponent and change the tide of the game, hopefully. 2 copies, because really, you only get to use about 1 Sunlight Punishment per game. You play 2 just for security's sake, but very honestly, I think you only play 1, so in future support, we may not even play Sunlight Punishment. Let's wait and see. And then for the grade 2s, we play 4 copies of the brand new support Hungersaurus, 2 Onishifuki, and 2 copies of the Blitz, or the Prayers one, the Burn Bright Pure Prayers one. Okay, straight away out of the box, there's going to be someone you don't recognize, and that's Hungersaurus. The first card to reveal for Festival Collection, and the first card on which everyone just instinctively was like, oh, this is bad. I think even I am quite guilty of that. I was like, this is not that great. But this gave Eugene something that DBT01 didn't give. The thing about DBT01 is that they gave us a lot of very weird grade 2s. Like they gave us this guy, then they gave us, this guy, then they also gave us, what's that one? This guy. And they were like, okay, but we never really knew what to do with them. They didn't instinctively spell, oh, it's Eugene support, but neither were they like decent support. Like they barely fit the bill of being able to play with Eugene, but they were like, oh, this is clearly the optimal choice, or oh, this is something that has a good interaction. They were just like, oh, it can be played. Hungersaurus, on the other hand, is completely different. Hungersaurus turns your entire game up on turn 2 because as soon as this unit is placed, it is a passive 15k unit during your turn, but it has one restriction. It cannot attack the opponent's vanguard if there is a front row rearguard. You see what I'm getting at with V Narukami? So the thing is that this card is a 15k unit at all times. It either swings for a rear or swings for face. The thing is, 15k, as you know with the lower shield values, is a magic number, which is DE's main selling point, having magic numbers. So this card, swing at the rear, is already pretty lethal because, yes, you waste an attack. That's the common argument I see against Hungersaurus. And that's not exactly wrong. You are wasting an attack. But in the long term, you are still removing opponent's rearguards, and you can just keep having this thing swing at your opponent's rearguards. And that is even if he has rearguards. If you don't, Hungersaurus goes straight for the face. A 15k beater at minimum, no matter boosted or not. Your opponent has to address this, and even if it has a trigger, then you can either boost Hungersaurus or just it's really a lot better. The other things that you have to choose from the DBTO one that I just showed you, a lot of their common weaknesses is that they just don't gain power. One gains shield, the other retired, the other soul charge, but really they never gain power. They just help spot remove. And while spot remove is one of the key things of Eugene, it makes Eugene very reactive of a deck rather than proactive. And Hungersaurus is a card that puts the pro back in proactive back. It just helps in early game aggression, it helps in control, it helps in the late game. Magic number wise, it always has you covered, which is why it's a card from Festival Collection that I strongly suggest to all Eugene players to pick up. It really does help the deck more than you think. Onishifuki is the main shoutout grade 2 from set 1 because it has almost the exact same skill. This unit gains 5k power when it attacks if you have 2 or less rear, if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards. Really, it's the same thing. Or is it? Hungersaurus gains 15k and it gains 5k, sorry, not 15k, gains 5k, and it can only attack the vanguard if there's no front or rear guards. So effectively speaking, if your opponent has a full back row but just no front or rear guards, this card goes live. Onishifuki, on the other hand, can attack anybody, but when it attacks, it needs your opponent to already have 2 or less rear guards. Then it gains 5k. And if you want to swing into a rear guard, and your opponent's board has say 3 to 4 cards or more, Onishifuki is only 10k, Hungersaurus will always be 15k. So you can see why, when it came to actually building the deck ratio, Hungersaurus is prioritized more over Onishifuki, despite the absolute fact that Onishifuki and Hungersaurus almost effectively do the same thing. In the next support, we already saw the next Eugene Grade 2, the Gibrasaurus. In my opinion, Gibrasaurus is going to compete and totally destroy Onishifuki in terms of deck slots, so its time is limited in this deck. But to be completely honest, Onishifuki is still a very good card, so I still would recommend you to have Onishifuki in your Dragon Empire collection as long as you're intending to play Eugene. The last 2 cards are the Blitz Orders, or Burn Bright or Pure Prayers. This card skill is basically if you have 3 or more cards in your damage zone, limit break 3, haha. It is a 15k shield. Blitz Orders, as the same with the other orders, sound like punishment. All orders are once per turn, so if you use one, you can't use the other copy. Mainly that's the main philosophy why in this deck, we only play 2 of each order at max. The good thing is for Burn Pride or Pure Prayers, you technically and generally can use both copies, but Sunlight Punishment you only get to use 1 at max, so just something to keep in mind. The 15k shield does help because Eugene is not very great defense, and while we do have very decently good offense, especially in the early game thanks to Hungersaurus and Onishifuki, I would still say that it needs some form of defense, which is why Burn Bright or Pure Prayers has a slot here. Oh, and the other grade 2 is of course Rendor, in case I forgot to mention that. Rendor is in this list, so yeah. And then for the grade 1s, we have, obviously we have Nigel, who returns from the right deck. Then we also have Stealth Dragon Tensha Steed, good card. 4 of our PGs, the other 3 Nigel, and then 2 of this girl, the Tamamishikao. Put this here. Okay, so let's break this down. This one is a lot easier, thank goodness, for me to explain. Nigel, we've already covered him just now on what he does. It's straightforward. Then we have the PG. This is the upgraded PG, very expensive. No, I'm just kidding, it's not really expensive. PG. The upgraded clause it has over the original is that when it's placed, if you have one, I'm sorry, hold on. If your hand has 2 or more cards, then you discard 1 card from your hand to pay the cost. If not, it becomes free. That's just something for you to take note. It's like playing Vanguard 0 for those of you who actually enjoy that mobile game. 2 of this girl. Her skill is very simple. When your opponent's rear guard is retired by a card effect, you retire her as well. You look at the top card of your deck, you either put it into your soul or superior, call it. That is also meant to be a card to combo with Eugene. You rest her, you snipe one, then she snipes herself, you look at the top card, you either soul charge it or exchange her for a new unit on the board. It's straightforward as that. We only play at 2 because as much as she is good, that is really all she does. So not really a fan. The next set does include, yes, I'm talking about next set a lot because we need to think for the future, my friends. Eugene has a double rare grade 1 5k. I think it's not that bad, but it's definitely a card that directly competes with this slot, so I would most likely be playing that in the future. Stay tuned for my Eugene D BTO2 deck profile if you'd like to see that. My life is pain. Alright, last card is Tencha Steed. Tencha Steed's skill is very simple, counterblast 1. After the attack it boosts, hits a vanguard, it kills itself. You search your deck for a copy of your vanguard, add it to your hand. As you probably could already guess, because of the fact that we actually only play one Randor, you don't want another copy of Randor. Instead, you are actually digging for the main man himself, Eugene. And this is really an on-hit pressure to search for your Persona Right. Persona Right, as you probably already know, is a pretty cool mechanic, and the fact that you can actually dig access for it helps Eugene a lot, considering that it really doesn't have that much going for the deck, and now you have a Persona Right. I mean, why not? So it's really one of the few things that helps Eugene keep moving at a relatively good pace. Just 1 to 2 well-used Tencha Steeds in terms of on-hit pressures or even activation ensures that for the next few turns to come, you will have plus 10k to your front row and draw. With stuff like Hungersaurus, these fellas go up to 25k, which, you know, is still pretty lethal, so I am a fan. I definitely think that Tencha Steed is something you should be playing in your Eugene decks at a 4. Not a 3, not a 2, at a 4. The on-hit pressure is too good right now to pass up. Maybe in 4 sets from now, Eugene has much better support. Maybe Eugene becomes the meta. I don't know. But for now, at this point in time, or at least for the next 2 to 3 sets, I'm definitely going to recommend Eugene players to play 4 Tencha Steed. Nothing less. Like I said, unless we get something really good. The fact that this searches out a Persona Right to ensure your game plan for the next few turns is just really good. Plus, it retires itself while looking for Eugene. So, you know, you get an open circle, you can just call stuff with Eugene's skill, or fill it yourself with, I don't know, another card. It's not that bad. Our trigger lineup for this deck is predictable, as you could have guessed from the way I've been describing this deck. We play 3 draws, 1 drop Veda, we play a total of 8 crits, and of course we play 4 heals. I really don't think I have to explain myself on the 8 crit. This is an aggressive deck per se. You definitely want those crits. I mean, if Eugene is as bad as a deck as people say it is, then let's kill them as fast as possible with this bad deck. Let's go with 8 crits. I see a lot of people actually talking about fronts, especially on the Japanese format. Wait, I am playing Japanese. Especially on the Japanese websites, they like to bring up the fronts. They say, oh, because Eugene's cards are random, so let's give it a front, so that they gain power and can actually swing in case we call a trigger. Huge problem with that is that you don't want to build a deck based on the absolute worst case scenario as much as it is pragmatic. I mean, like I just said, the fact that we have stuff like Hungersaurus and Onishifuki, really, is there seriously going to be a situation where you swing with a trigger? Yes, but it's not that high. Plus, if you know that you are going to have a chance, an opportunity, where you have triggers on the board, shouldn't you aim the game as fast as possible? Just something to think about. Eugene is something that's really a big work in progress, especially because it doesn't have the greatest of support. But I certainly feel that at least in this point in time, there is something that can be done with the deck. I mean, that's why I'm doing this deck profile. So, that is Eugene. Really, I've had a lot of fun testing. It was very painful, I'm not gonna lie. There were a lot of things that I had to change my perspective of in terms of what I play, how I do it, the different gameplay. resorting to relatively unconventional strategies and whatnot are, yeah, not fun. It's not fun in terms of testing it, but really once you get the hang of it, at least for me, this style of playing Eugene, like playing V Narukami, it is really fun, especially because I'm a huge Narukami fanboy. I really love the clan since its inception. So, you know, this is definitely something that I'm going to continue playing, and definitely I would vouch for at least Narukami players out there who don't have a deck in D, pick up Eugene. You know, it's fun. For people who want a cheap deck, pick up Eugene. He's very affordable, I can promise you that. I was scammed from my pre-order of Eugene because I bought it from the pre-Big Web price, so I took a hit. But for all of you now, you won't be taking a hit. Go ahead. I really, really recommend it. It's not as bad as people say it is. So thank you all so much for watching this video. Like the usual, if you like, enjoy, you know, subscribe and stuff. Share this video. Really share it, because I want to know what you guys think. Eugene doesn't really have that much representation. There only seems to be about 1 to 2 builds of this deck, and every other build just seems very, you know, something you built from your mom's basement and laugh. So this is my take on it after a lot of testing. What do you guys think? How will this deck evolve once we see DBTO2, DBTO3, DBTO4? I don't know. But as I probably said throughout this video, Eugene is a deck that I'll be playing personally, so I'm definitely going to be updating this deck as long as we get updates. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.